Look, there has to be a clear line separating Bronny from his father's shadow. He moved out, which naturally means our daily chats have slowed down quite a bit. The dynamic between the James duo just took a turn for the complex. That storybook family duo is facing some heavy scrutiny following Bronny's recent candid admissions. We've all been fed this narrative a million times. My goal is simple: I want the world to recognize me for who I am, not just a name on a jersey. Everyone assumed they were inseparable, so this latest twist caught the entire league off guard. So where did the friction start? Let's peel back the layers and revisit day one. Over the past 12 months, the young James has been laser focused on carving out his own path and personal life. The real mystery is whether this shift implies that long-awaited family alliance is crumbling before it even gains any real momentum. Back in 2023, when the king faced the press to announce his ultimate goal of sharing the court with his boy, the entire sports community absolutely lost it. The debate raged for months about whether any franchise would actually take that gamble. Was a draft pick really going to be spent just to satisfy his father's bucket list? Moreover, what would that do to the kid's reputation while he's trying to build his own legacy? Then disaster struck in the summer of 2023 when the young athlete collapsed during practice. Recovery was an uphill battle filled with doubt as the family weighed some terrifying possibilities. That health crisis effectively pressed the pause button on all those big plans. The professional aspirations and the family hype were suddenly hanging by a thread. It almost ended before it even took flight, but the kid's work ethic was undeniable. He fought back, grinding through every workout and evaluation until he forced his way into the draft discussion. Ultimately, the Lakers snagged him in the second round of the 2024 draft. And just like that, history was made. The James pair officially became teammates, marking the league's very first father-son duo to share a roster. It seemed like a fairy tale ending, but right out of the gate, things weren't that simple. The rookie was battling a massive hurdle that had zero to do with his jump shot. Every headline about the kid was inevitably anchored to his father's legendary status. Scouts couldn't look at his performance without comparing it to his old man's greatness. Whenever he entered a stadium, the lenses were fixated on him for all the wrong reasons. They weren't just watching a player, they were stalking the living legacy of the king. The pressure had been mounting, and during his pre-draft press conference, he finally voiced what was on his mind. He dropped a subtle hint that most fans missed, but it revealed everything about his mindset. It was essentially about establishing the identity of Bronny James as an individual rather than just being viewed as the legend's offspring. This wasn't about stats or scouting reports anymore. It was a raw conversation about selfhood and personal truth. He desperately needed the world to recognize him as his own man, separate from his father's shadow. That distinction is absolutely crucial for my growth as a person. That was his stance before tip-off. Now let's jump ahead to November of 2025. The Lakers are currently navigating their second year with the James duo on the active roster. Following a victory against Utah, the senior James casually let a detail slip during his post-game interview. It was a throwaway comment to most, but it spoke volumes about their current relationship. He mentioned Bronny getting his own apartment, no drama or bad blood, just a young man moving on. The veteran star even joked about it with a grin on his face, quiping that because his son no longer shares his roof. Their interactions have dwindled. The king even gave a mock sulk for the lens, yet beneath the humor a shift was evident. The young James had officially carved out his own physical space. He had finally struck out as an independent man. His evolution, honestly, it's been a total joy to witness. And remember, he is just getting started. The superstar glowed with paternal pride, though his follow-up changed the vibe entirely. Look, he only hit 21 recently, so he is still figuring things out and, leveling up with every single practice session. Constantly evolving forever, a student of the game. That sentiment was expected, but then he dropped a real bombshell. I believe he is loving the grind, though you'd really need to check with him. Eyes more than you would me. Definitely more than me. Essentially, the legend admitted he is no longer the authority on his kid's daily life. He followed up with a very specific reason. He moved out, so our check-ins are rarer now. The kid has got his own roof. Usually, a 21-year-old getting an apartment is hardly a headline. However, things hit differently when that 21-year-old is a James, especially when he is striving to forge a legacy distinct from his dad's both in life and hoops. This relocation signifies far more than just signing a new lease. Then consider the dialogue that unfolded roughly at that same moment, when a journalist grilled the rookie about his father's tenure with the purple and gold, specifically the rumors regarding where the veteran might sign next. The kid's response was remarkably brief and blunt. Yeah, a buddy actually rang me up asking what my plan was because they'd seen some stuff about my pops. I was totally out of the loop. It took an outside call to tip him off. He wasn't even tracking the news himself. When he called, I just told him I had zero clue what he was on about. It was just a random inquiry. Honestly, I really do not follow that drama at all. I am clueless. Contrary to popular belief, he wasn't tethered to his father's inner circle. He was existing in his own bubble. His gaze was fixed solely on his personal journey. And regarding the massive machinery of brand LeBron, the son was quite literally tuned out. Our narrative begins here not with some explosive family feud or heated clash, but with an emerging adult steadily and silently, purposefully stepping out from the massive shadow cast by a global sporting icon. That gap, measured both in miles and career trajectories, is the heart of the matter, a quest for true self-identity. To grasp his motivations, you must first empathize with the reality of living in his shoes. Not just as the heir to the throne or a draft pick serving a legacy, but as an individual. To reach that understanding, we need to look way beyond his professional debut. He has lived under a microscope since he was a small boy. The flashes have been constant since he first picked up a rock. His prep games were televised to massive digital audiences. His college choice became a top-tier national headline. When his health crisis struck during training, it transcended sports news, hitting every major outlet. Throughout it all, the narrative remained fixed. He was viewed as the legend's offspring before he was ever seen as himself. Living in that kind of intense spotlight brings a level of pressure that most regular folks could never truly imagine. So when Bronny walked into those high-stakes pre-draft meetings, scouts weren't just checking out his jump shot or his defensive footwork. Every single question seemed to circle back to his dad, forcing him to explain who he is in LeBron's shadow. What's the best advice LeBron gave you? How much of your game did you pick up from your old man? Are you just chasing a dream to play alongside him? Do you think your spot is just a result of your last name? Honestly, his composure under that line of fire says a lot about his maturity and mindset. He didn't snap or try to shut down the reporters. Instead, he gave thoughtful, sincere responses that showed he knew exactly who he wanted to be. He openly acknowledged that his father taught him the grind and showed him what true professionalism looks like. He described LeBron as his biggest cheerleader throughout the whole journey. However, when things turned to his own personal brand, he didn't stutter about the legacy he wants to build for himself. We've all caught glimpses of this mindset. My goal is simply for the public to recognize me as Bronny James. That statement carries a whole different weight when you see the environment he was in. Imagine him surrounded by a swarm of media and flashing lights. Fully aware of the nepotism talk, he isn't acting like those whispers don't exist or trying to dodge them. He's addressing the elephant in the room head on. Being seen as something more than just LeBron's kid, that's the goal I'm aiming for. It wasn't a whine or a jab at his family, it was just a calm, deliberate declaration of his own path. But then, a journalist decided to dig a little deeper. They wondered if he ever had to have a sit-down with LeBron about using the name Bronny. Did he actually have to tell his dad that he needed some breathing room to be his own man? Did you guys ever talk about this "I want to be my own person" thing? Was that a talk you ever had to initiate with your father? Nope, never happened. A quick, blunt denial. When the press tried to spin it as a family decision, Bronny clarified. Actually, it wasn't like that at all, see? Bronny was basically just a childhood nickname that stuck with me. It wasn't some grand branding move, it was just how his inner circle addressed him. Yet as the years passed, that simple name became a symbol for everything he's now trying to reshape on his own terms. I think it is crucial to establish a clear boundary between Bronny and LeBron. Pay attention to those words. That is not the vibe of a kid coasting on his dad's fame for an easy paycheck. That is a young athlete making a bold public stand, and the moment he chose to do it is key. This wasn't some defensive reaction to a bad night on the court or online trolls. He made this point right in the heat of the draft cycle, a time when most would play up the family connection to impress the scouts watching his every move. The decision makers were right there listening. Instead of taking the easy path, Bronny explicitly stated that he deserves to be evaluated on his own merit. What adds another level to this is the sheer volume of hate the kid has had to endure. Critics claimed he did not have the talent to even be in the draft conversation. The consensus among haters was that his last name was his only ticket to the league. Big-time analysts like Stephen A. Smith were publicly doubting LeBron's influence on the whole process. And the scrutiny was non-stop, yet Bronny didn't hide behind his father's shadow to avoid the heat. He decided to carve his path. This meant relocating and ignoring the media storm surrounding his father. This identity crisis isn't actually a conflict with the man. It is about fighting the image of being just a sidekick. Every move he makes today points in a new direction, escaping that shadow to find his own spotlight. Here is what that dream really looked like. For years, the press obsessed over LeBron's wish to play with him. He stated it plainly, and once the Lakers closed the deal, it seemed like a fairy tale ending father and son together in history. Yet one crucial detail was ignored in all that talk. No one asked the kid if he shared that vision. And when the question was finally put to him, directly his response was the most candid he has ever been. Look, your old man often said playing with you was his dream. But I'm not sure if anyone checked with you. Oh, was that ever your own goal? What was your take? That query is powerful, because it shows how lopsided the conversation had become. We all heard the father, but ignored the son. Actually, never. Well, honestly, my focus was always just building my own brand and name. No, never. He was incredibly blunt. Teaming up with his father wasn't his plan. He just wanted to reach the league and establish a solo legacy. The two goals seem similar, but the intent is totally different. One fulfills a father's wish, the other defines a young man. And obviously, making the pros is the ultimate prize for everyone in here. But I never really thought about specifically playing with my dad. He shut it down. To be clear, he added one final thought. I mean, he's definitely brought it up a few times, but for me, it's just not something I consider. The king mentioned it, not the son. It wasn't even on his mind. That is the clearest sign of the gap between their perspectives. This matters because the entire draft hype relied on the father's desire. LeBron spoke, the media hyped it, and everyone assumed he agreed. But the kid never said it. He never claimed that was the goal. Now in their second season together as teammates, he is proving that his objectives are entirely independent. In January 2025, during a match against the Wizards, cameras caught a very tense sideline exchange between the two. A missed rotation triggered his father's reaction. The footage leaked, and instantly the internet was a swarm of wild rumors. Was there friction? Was the family dynamic finally hitting a breaking point? In reality, the situation was far more complex than that. It was just that high-stakes intensity you see between two pros chasing perfection. They both moved on. LA took the win, and once the final horn blew, Bronny was talking about how mind-blowing it was to see his old man dominate. That heated exchange wasn't a sign of a fallout. It was a raw reminder that this setup is far messier than the fairy tale. Truthfully, LeBron treats his son like any other teammate once they hit the hardwood. And that was a deliberate choice. Rob Pelinka noted that in a summer scrimmage, the king went right at Bronny, and the whole vibe was more about testing his grit than showing love. It is proof that LeBron expects greatness and gives him zero shortcuts. He even forbids the word dad while they are on the clock. Out there, he is just a teammate, which raises a point everyone ignores. Is it actually a massive burden? To play with a father who is a legend and expects you to be perfect. Is it really the dream scenario? Bronny answered that without uttering a single word. He packed up and found his own place to live. When the media grilled him about his professional goals, he focused on filling a role, boosting the squad, and finding his own identity. He is modeling his game after guys like Davion Mitchell, Drew Holiday, and Derek White. Players like Davion Mitchell, or maybe Drew Holiday, and Derek White, to name just a few examples. Basically the guys who know their job and execute it at an elite level. That is the blueprint Bronny is eyeing. Not his father's massive legacy, but the path of a pro who found his niche. He isn't trying to be the king, he is just trying to be himself. The more you listen to his interviews, the more you realize this father-son dream was LeBron's vision, not his own. Then there is the part about his work ethic. One of the biggest insults thrown at him during the draft was that he's a fraud, that his spot is purely a result of his father's name rather than actual skill. For a kid who has dealt with that noise his entire life, who survived a major medical crisis, and who is still fighting for respect, that kind of hate hits different. But look at what he said when asked point blank about those who say he's a fake. What is your response to the critics who say you don't actually belong here? Honestly, there is nothing to say. He was totally unfazed, no ego, just composure. Then he explained his mindset. I mean, I see all the trash being talked, but I just have to ignore it. He hears it. He is fully aware of the targets on his back. Bronny's not looking for a pity party or making excuses. He's just taking the hits and staying the course. He's making it clear that those shouting the loudest from the sidelines have zero clue what his journey actually entailed. And trust me, that path was anything but easy. Following that heart scare, Bronny stared down medical realities that could have crushed his dreams before they even took flight. Seriously. Truth is, when that diagnosis hit, there were a bunch of different ways my life could have gone. Not every road led back to a professional basketball court. And honestly, I'm just incredibly grateful that it didn't end up being one of those worst case scenarios. I'm just so thankful he recovered and got back into the game. He ground it out through the whole pre-draft grind. He was hitting the gym 40 minutes before anyone else. A small fact that caught every scout's eye because it showed true grit in a room full of guys trying to look busy. Let's talk about that drive and being the first one through the doors. Everyone mentions how you're always there 40 minutes early every single time. When people ask where he got that discipline, Bronny points directly to one man, for sure. I mean, I owe that entire mindset to my pops. He's the one who showed me the ropes and how to, conduct myself professionally, and that's where the dynamic between the two Jameses gets really fascinating. Bronny isn't pushing LeBron away. He's taking the blueprint his father provided and using it to build his own kingdom. This isn't some kid holding a grudge or trying to ghost his dad. This is a young man built by his father's influence and family's backing, who is now stepping out to carve his own legacy. The hustle, the dawn workouts, the showing up early, that's all LeBron's DNA. But the house Bronny is building is strictly his own. The way he balances both sides of that coin, honoring his roots while chasing his own vision with total focus, makes him far more compelling than the critics give him credit for. That's where the real story lives. Bronny has officially moved out and found a place of his own. He's finally tasting real independence as an adult. It's the real deal. LeBron mentioned it offhandedly after a game, noting that their daily chats have dipped now that Bronny's on his own. Bronny has been vocal on record time and again that he wants to be recognized as Bronny James, not just a sequel to LeBron, insisting on a clear line between his own brand and his father's. He's even admitted that playing together wasn't his personal dream. It's all documented. But let's be clear, there's no massive family feud here. The only flicker of friction was that brief sideline spat in January 2025, which they both brushed off instantly. That's not a falling out. That's just two fierce competitors wanting to win. LeBron is still there cheering him on. Bronny still attributes his entire professional foundation to his father's guidance. So what is the real story unfolding here? When questioned about reaching the big leagues, Bronny chose every word with extreme precision. I don't envision it as simply reaching the destination. It's not just a joint venture between me and my father. This isn't about his legacy. It never was. Making the cut, you see, I'd be thrilled just to make the roster rather than fixating on playing alongside my dad. That is the ultimate objective. Forget the sentimental father-son photos. He wants to earn his spot on his own. Honestly, that is not what occupies my thoughts at all. I am strictly focused on grinding and seeing where the journey leads. Do the work and let the chips fall where they may. That single sentence encapsulates his entire worldview. Then came the moment a journalist asked what he'd say to executives, who might recruit him for something other than his actual talent. Only pick me if you truly believe in my skill set, not for some ulterior motive. Obviously referencing my father or something similar. Look, I'll take whatever opening comes my way. The journalist presents a clear choice: draft him for pure talent or for the family name. Bronny's response is unwavering. In all honesty, this is serious business. Bronny isn't saying he's incapable of playing alongside his father. What he is actually revealing is that the public narrative everyone swallowed was never quite the whole truth. This idea of a unified father-son ambition was just a myth. The assumption that Bronny's main goal was to share the court with his father. None of that was his reality. It was a script written for him without his permission. Now Bronny is taking the step every 21-year-old takes when they find their voice. He is finally authoring his own journey. Bronny cannot rewrite his lineage. He cannot erase the past, but he can certainly carve his own path. He can ignore his father's media circus and clarify that playing with LeBron was never his personal goal. He can arrive 40 minutes early and let his performance do the talking. He can openly state that a clear distinction is necessary. And perhaps the most telling part, he can stand before a sea of cameras and show a level of self-awareness few young stars possess. You know, there's this shadow cast by my father's career, and people constantly try to connect me to everything he's accomplished. Like a rookie who just finished a season with the greatest player of this era, yet still feels this way. Still believes his page is blank and ready for his own words that isn't a sign of failure. Look, I haven't actually achieved anything on my own yet, so there has to be a clear line between Bronny and LeBron. That is the mark of a man who understands his identity and knows exactly what he's working toward. Disregard any gossip about Bronny clashing with LeBron. They aren't at odds whatsoever. He's just carving a unique path defining this whole situation. Is it possible to mix blood and career without friction being a given? Drop your take down in the comments. For more content, hit the upcoming link on your display.